It took me 1 year to transform a broken vacuum cleaner into a giant Dragonfly-inspired model, which challenged me from the very start to the very end of the process.
Oh, meu Deus.
Welcome to Cut, Transform Glue. The idea for this project came to me when I found a broken vacuum cleaner. I couldn't help but see the body of a dragonfly hidden within its shapes. There's all sorts of nasty stuff on found items, and a vacuum cleaner is no different. In fact, it's even worse. I began by cleaning it from the outside and then from the inside, where I found a huge pile of dust and what seemed to be fur. From a dog, probably. Hopefully. After diving in all that dust for a while and throwing away a bunch of extra parts, I was left with just what I was going to need for this flying beast and could start putting its body together. The vacuum cleaner had some air vents on the sides, which I thought would definitely break the sense of scale of the model. So the first thing I did was to hide it, closing the gaps first and then covering it all with some car body filler. This thing is nasty and bad smelling, but it's the fastest way to cover large areas. And you can work it even before it's completely set, which happens in about 15 minutes or so. If you're quick, you'll be able to cut it using a blade. Once it sets though, it gets rock hard and you can sand it. With that shape solved, I could move on to the front section, which is made of a much better kind of plastic. Thinking ahead of the next stages, I removed some unwanted features from it, and then I had to make sure that the connection to the blue portion was strong enough. So I made sure to use a ton of CA glue and some tiny screws. This will make sure that the front of the dragonfly will never break apart. But I felt something was missing in that area. It was too empty. I threw some marks on the surface just to keep things aligned. And then, using double-sided tape, I attached sandpaper to the surface. And with that, I could match its curve to the next shape. It was glued in place with CA glue, using those marks as a guide. And pretty quickly I had some cool side pods added to the model. These days, while I'm working on my projects, I'm constantly thinking ahead. One thing I keep in mind is to try to create a way to separate the pieces so I can break it down into smaller parts. This is crucial for the painting process, especially in a project as big as this one. So I added an attaching point on the top for the wings and one in the bottom, which I'll use to attach the thing to a base, and one that will also help me during the building process. By the way, these are all 3D printed pieces with embedded nuts, my second favorite way to attach model parts. I'll show you my first favorite method in just a second. As you can see, I also added some tiny screws on this one, as it will hold the entire weight of the project. Now, if this is a dragonfly, it needs of course a long tail. This portion of the design had a lot of back and forth, where I tested different pieces with different lengths. Eventually, I landed on this white piece, which required some preparation. To securely attach it to the body, just as I did in the other parts of the model, I used a tiny screw. And then I decided to change it one more time. I cut off a weird portion from the back of it and simply extended it with a custom 3D printed piece. Then I attached some reinforcement panels that looked pretty good, and it holds the back turbines. Speaking of the turbines, let me show you how I made them, and use this opportunity to show you my favorite way to attach parts to a model: fake Lego bricks. Now of course there's a limit to how big these parts can be, as these bricks are very tiny, but it's surprising how powerful they can be and how much they'll help you keeping the pieces separated. I'll use them to keep each turbine as an individual piece, easier to hold, easier to paint, and to precisely align these bricks, I'm using 3D printed parts as always. And the idea is pretty simple. There's a positive attached to the T-shaped piece from the vacuum cleaner, and a negative attached to the orange round shape, which is the turbine itself, from a broken toy. But I had to make that toy piece to look more like a sci-fi machine part. The first thing I added was a gear from an office printer I took apart in the past. I removed some parts from both grillaries to be able to make them fit together, and using acrylic shapes as spacers, I glued them with CA glue. Then the 3D printing fest began. Haters gonna hate, but yeah, using the measurements from that toy part, I made a cool looking nozzle for the turbine, where the heat, or I guess the thrust, would exit. And the detailing of it all could begin, adding first some things to each nozzle, and then, reaching my collection of the tiniest gribblies, I added some surface detail here and there. Now, there was still a big hole in the middle of the T-shaped piece. I had some great round nozzle looking shapes in my collection from an unknown source, and so I made a custom piece that matched every part dimension. Tricky, but a magical property of 3D printing. Went back to my little bin of little round bits and found a couple that worked great. Glued everything in the middle of that piece with a lot of CA glue, and with that the turbines were complete. Another big challenge of this project are the wings, and it was going to have not 2 but 4 wings, which means a lot of weight. Thinking of that, I made a super sturdy sandwich of found parts and 3D printed shapes with a bunch of embedded nuts. I really needed it to be reliable and able to hold the weight, so I spared no efforts. So I used a lot of tiny screws to keep the different parts together, and threw as many lines as necessary to make sure I was going to glue everything as aligned as possible. And then of course, 2 big M5 bolts connect that huge cookie to the top of the unit. Some call it overkill, I call it peace of mind. Now the true engineering challenge was to figure out the pieces that would hold each of the 4 wings, while still looking good, being strong enough and able to be disassembled, using 6 bolts where 2 were shared. Oof, that sounded kinda crazy, and it really was. The wings were going to be made out of acrylic. I'll show you them in just a second, but still I needed an opaque, strong base section to be attached to each of the wing mounts, so I made them out of PLA and styrene, which is strong enough. Now, another challenge of the wings is that they might not need to actually move as they're in a scale model, but they need to look like they could move. It needs to look believable, something I always focus in my models. So as you can see, I'm selecting pieces that indicate some type of movement, and I'm combining them in a way that they look like they could swing up and down. And to reinforce that idea of movement, of a powerful machine, I'm adding different types of detail, like this round resin shape that seems to have some kind of mechanism. Maybe there's a motor under it that helps with the movement. And this is a very important aspect of the creative process of my models. I'm constantly thinking about the pieces I'm choosing and what they seem to do. I'm creating a visual narrative that helps to tell the story and the function of that object. Now, something that could break that narrative are visible bolts, like those 6 on the top right there. So let's figure out a way to hide them. The material of choice again is styrene, which I stacked making a 6mm disc that was chucked into my drill press for refinement. And then attached over everything with another Lego piece, hiding my crimes and making this design much more believable. Okay, but where are the eyes of this dragonfly? Or better yet, what's piloting this thing? Let's talk about the cockpit, the pilot, and its AI companion. As always, I begin another structure by figuring out how I'm going to attach and remove it from the main body, especially the centerpiece of this build, where I want to add the best design features and attention to detail. For that, custom-made pieces that follow the design elements previously chosen for the build with embedded M4 nuts and some bolts. That front piece also included some slots for tiny fake bricks, and why that is the case will be clear in a moment. And of course, it also had a concave feature, matching the diameter of the cockpit balls. By the way, Christmas tree decoration balls. Everything can be agreeably. Now here's why I had fake bricks installed in there, to be able to hide the bolts, of course, with a custom piece that combined a lot of different elements. The AI companion will be made with the body of a broken webcam. And to make it look even better, I decided to actually switch its lenses. As you know, I have a huge collection of lenses and tech I've saved over the years, and in that sorting box, I have just the perfect pair of eyes for that thing. So let's start this journey by closing the webcam body shut, simply attaching everything with CA glue over the seams and closing it with its own screw. Now of course the lenses cannot be painted, so again I need a way to remove them from the webcam. The only way to do it was by a snug fit, which means a lot of precise work. I had to be extra careful because that piece right there is resin and super brittle. But of course, me being the holder of the most incomplete drill bit set ever, I had to reach the final diameter by hand. And once I got there, I just attached the resin piece to the webcam body using cedar glue. Then I reached for a compass to be able to throw some cool panel lines on the round body. Those lines were then cut with a snap knife and then carved using a nail salon tool, a sharpened cuticle remover which works great for that purpose. A couple of extra eyes were installed, one in the top of the main camera and a smaller one to the side. I of course then removed everything and applied a thick coat of primer, and this AI companion camera thing was finished. Now, some may have noticed that there was a pilot figure inside the other sphere. It's the pilot, this figure which I 3D printed. Like in most of my projects here on the channel, it's on the 1:20 scale, and the challenge now is to make a cockpit for him. So I began by adding a flat spot on the back of the sphere, giving myself a nice attachment point. Again, I need to be able to remove this figure so I can play with it, so I can paint it properly. With that flat spot ready, I could start working on it, beginning with the seat, which I decided, in order to make my life easier, to craft right in the back of the pilot, using this wonderful material, which is 1mm styrene, a material which is easy to cut, transform and glue together, embodying all important aspects of model making. Now, I'm not worried that this seat is 100% correct. The goal right here is to make it fit inside the cockpit, which was super challenging, so I had to throw the realness of it out the window and focus on having the visuals of two dragonfly eyes. Now, this little guy probably has a neck problem, and his seat only makes it worse. But I guess that's what you can expect by living inside a sphere, or maybe by pursuing a model making career. But to each its own. And then came yet another Lego brick, so he can come out and stretch. Next, I added some leg support and some pedals, so he has an extra controlling method. Then came a couple of hand controls or joysticks, and some detail all around the seat, always making sure it didn't interfere with the sphere canopy. But he's a pilot, and pilots need helmets, of course. The best way to achieve that shape fast was by starting with a plastic bead. After a lot of sanding, carving, and careful removing, constantly checking against the figure, the base of the helmet was ready. Now, to craft the visor, a part of an earbud was the perfect choice. A tiny little metal detail piece to take the visor to the next level was then added. Careful detailing of the interior, a good coat of primer, and the Dragonfly has its tripulation, a pilot and an AI companion. let me take a moment right here to share another great material that helped me achieve the incredible look of this project, if I may say so myself: epoxy putty. Alongside the fake Lego bricks for some cool attachment points, 1mm styrene for fast scratch building, epoxy putty was amazing, so I could craft some precise and smooth curves. This is a must-have in your tool set, so yeah, keep an eye out for that. Extra structures included a dome right in between the back wings, which in my mind is a sensor that tracks wing rhythm and position. A cool looking antenna previously made for a big project here on the channel right before and over the eyes. And another soil analysis sensor on the bottom of the craft, kinda pointing down. At this point, I was getting near the 1 year mark and had to paint it, which is the only part of the entire process I don't really love, but one that's crucial so I can express my creativity and bring these models to life. I'm constantly making changes to the painting process, switching types of paint and testing different techniques. Different than the build process, painting is where I still don't really have a clear viewpoint, so I won't try to show you that process in great detail here. Suffice to say, this is a peaceful scientific unit, so I went with white and shades of light gray, a vibrant green for my usual replacement parts, and orange for each scientific attached device. Its name, QADSAR, for Quark Aerial Division for Soil Analysis and Research. A project that, even in the last day of work, kept throwing me new challenges. Thank you so much to those who joined me on this great journey. I knew from the very beginning that this was going to be crazy, but I just didn't know to what extent. This model changed me, evolved as I progressed along this year, and having you here was a true honor. A special thanks to my patrons who hold my hand on adventures like this one, and to you for watching to the very end.